I really don't enjoy making videos for my games because of the amount of time I put into it. Perfectionism is a curse and time is its enemy, so I'm limiting how long these videos will be. So where did I get the idea of Colorless? As soon as I got the yes on making a game for my senior project, I was super excited to start. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to make a game that had some meaning behind it. Then I thought about color being my passion, and the thought of being colorless was being a person that was stripped away of their passions. I went through many renditions on how I wanted to begin the game. I had a whole lost father-daughter thing and corruption of government and the idea of color being a luxury, but then I thought the idea will be used for a different game. I settled on something a little more simple, and I enjoyed the idea. Emily, the main character, is trying to find her passion and was on a journey to find a book that was said to be the key to creating beautiful art. When she finally found the book, it was nothing like what she imagined. She was sucked into the book and now has to save this world. Obviously, the game is going to have a heavy importance of color, and I defined it in this way. Color is the emotions, thinking, and personality of the being that has it. I also came up with this dialogue. Don't lose the color in your life. We all have different mixes of color inside of us. It changes every day as we grow and think differently. It is the embodiment of what we are, but sometimes life dulls our colors and we lose ourselves. It can be hard to keep our colors bright, but it is never okay to let them go away. As when you lose your colors, you lose yourself. Don't become colorless. Alright, enough about the story and concept. What is the game going to be? One type of games that I enjoy immensely is turn-based RPGs. Pokemon Pearl was my first game, and would you know it, it is also a turn-based RPG. But I didn't just want a turn-based RPG where the player just clicks buttons and had something happen. It is fun if you do it right like Pokemon, but I want more interaction. Thankfully, there is this one game that I can still remember to this day in my childhood that I absolutely loved, which was not only a turn-based RPG, but also an interactive one. Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. If you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend it, but sadly the company that created those games closed their doors, so no new titles. I thought this type of gameplay would be perfect for my game. So the first thing to do was to learn how to make a turn-based battle system, and thankfully Bracky's had me covered. You can see in this early concept art and early battle system that I was doing all the arts and animations. I quickly switched off of doing that after realizing that it was a mistake. By the way, go watch my 5-bit mistakes video, link in the description. I started programming and refactored a lot for getting the timed attacks, walking for the enemy, walking for the player, and timed defense to work properly and sequence smoothly. By the way, if you are just starting to make a game, please split up your scripts into multiple script files rather than just one big one, as it will be confusing on where to find all what you might need, and overall will save you in the long run. You will have a big script file eventually, and sometimes you need it to be in one file, but in most cases it is better to separate them. At the end of the fall semester, I presented my project to my professors, and they enjoyed what I had so far. They told me to keep going. Here's the demo video of what was shown to them. You can now see that the player is actually not made by B, and I am glad I went for this approach. I was never going to get this quality without spending an immense amount of time. I had my jazzy battle theme that I created that I also talked about in my 5 big mistakes video. You should really go watch that, by the way. Anyways, I added my song and sound effects that I got from JSFXR by spamming the random button a bunch of times until I got something I wanted. So in the span of a semester, which was about 3.5 months, the basic time attacks and time defense was complete, but there's still a lot to do. This is when things really started to get rolling though. December, I took most of the days off, but did work on the game a bit to add some of the sprites that I was getting from an artist on Fiverr. After adding the new background and another enemy, I knew that the current battle system was going to need to change, as I had the enemies walk up to the player all the way and attack, which will not happen with each enemy. Also, since the scene changed a bit, the player position and the positions of all the enemies changed as well. This is when I really started to think about how to make game development easier for me, and I realized the system for hitting the enemy and the enemy hitting you needs to be almost exactly the same for each and every enemy. So I made the enemy walk to a certain position and start their attack animation. Once they finished, walk back to where they came from. This is also when I started refactoring how the timing worked for when you hit the enemy and when the enemy hits you. Basically, the update method is running while the animations for the attack is going off for when the player will hit the spacebar to block or hit an enemy. There's a good timing or blocked boolean that has the animation event that triggers them to false or true based on the animation of the enemy or player. If you look here in the brush prepare attack animation, you can see the spot where good timing equals true and when it goes back to false. If the player hits the spacebar during this window, then we know that the player timed the spacebar hit well, as it will check in the update method. If they miss this window, or the animation finishes, don't reward the player. The block boolean pretty much works the same way when blocking an enemy attack. Now let's look at a video of a progress check I took for myself on February 15, 2023. You can already see that we have two new enemies, the flying pig and the hungry bear. The flying pig is a flying enemy, so you cannot hit them with the brush slam, as they will just fly away and dodge ground attacks. The hungry bear is the first enemy with defense, so your attack will do less damage to them. Here are both the animations for when they get hurt and when they attack, which I think look pretty cool. You can also see we now have a guard animation. It's nothing too special, but it looks pretty cool. You can see the UI has changed immensely and is actually starting to look like a game, and I am super happy with all the work I put into it. Also, now when we damage an enemy and an enemy damages us, we see the amount of damage they actually did to us and what we did to them. This is just good feedback to give to the player about how much damage everything is doing. There's also a low health indicator when the player drops below 5 HP. So things are coming along nicely, and now let's talk about the current progress check that I have, which was created on March 5th. Wow, we now have a second scene for the game, and it isn't any new gameplay, but a cutscene for when the title card will appear in the game. Obviously, it isn't finished. Having the main character fall for a very long time is kinda boring. There will be more added to this, but it is a good start. As the cutscene ends, it just transitions to the next scene, which is our battle scene again. Now we can actually use items. We have some new UI for the description of the item and a selection UI that shows the player's inventory in a pretty cool list that I am super proud of. It only displays 4 items at a time with their name and a little sprite of the item, but going up and down we can see the max amount of items the player has is 10, which might change later. Anyways, here are all the item sprites I have now, and the person that did this for me did a great job and even gave me some extra stuff. Basically, all the items have an item script that contains some values that determines the type of item and other things like if it is key item and etc. I am thinking of refactoring this a bit later with some inheritance rather than having every item have some values that will never be used, but for now this works well. Anyways, when we use an item, a short animation of the player using the item is played, and depending on what it does, gives the player a heads up with an animation of what stat just got raised. I tend to add more tells to keep the player informed on if they still have their power increase or defense increase, but for now it does exactly what it's supposed to. Also, we can now even examine the enemies. This UI already existed back in February, but I didn't have it done until this progress check. A book pops up when checking an enemy and then gives a photo of the enemy, a brief description of stats, and a description about the enemy. This types it out at a pretty brisk pace. But if you just want to skip all of this typing, you can just hit the spacebar to quickly display everything rather than waiting for all the text to finish. Then clicking space again will close the book and you can select an enemy again to attack. You can see that you don't lose your turn when examining enemies. And basically, that is it for what I have done at the moment. Right now, I am waiting for some more sprites from some artists, and I will finally incorporate a special attack. I am also waiting on a tile set for the first area, and then I will be able to make a testing area for transitioning to battles from the overworld scene and other things as well. I like how I said I wasn't going to make this devlog long and talkative, but this one is so long because I actually have a lot that I have done these past few months. If you want me to get more into the nitty-gritty details on how my systems work and all the coding, I will gladly explain it in another video. Tell me if you want this in the comments, and also while you're down there, like this video and subscribe to stay updated on my videos. Anyways, see you in the next devlog, and thanks for watching.